How to get massive publicity and make your business go viral by understanding these media secrets. This comes from the book Trust Me, I'm Lying: Confessions of a Media Manipulator by Ryan Holiday, who is a PR guru and was a director of marketing at American Apparel. One of the strategies he recommends is called trading up the chain. Essentially, what you do is you approach small or local blogs that have very low publication standards. And then what you're able to do is gradually climb up in importance in the media based on the social proof that was established with the smaller publications. So you start with the local blog, then you move on to the local news site. Then you might get picked up on Reddit, or you can start fueling Reddit with your own posts. Then you might get covered by a larger publication like Huffington Post, then a major newspaper, and potentially cable news. One of the elements here that I think is going to rise in importance is Reddit. As Reddit prepares for its IPO, you're going to see an explosion of opportunity, both on the advertising side and on the organic side. Help a reporter out is one of the easiest ways to get published in the media. I've done this myself. Essentially, what you do is almost daily, 3 times a day, you're able to write journalists to see what things they want professionals or experts to give quotes on. And Ryan Holiday says he's giving quotes on things for which he actually has no expertise. So we get quoted in CBS, MSNBC, Reuters, ABC News, etc. I think this is one of the easiest ways to get started with public relations. He also establishes a lot of PR stunts. So, for example, designing ads and then complaining about the ads you created anonymously. And then what you could do is you could leak those complaints to bloggers. So the idea here is that running ads is only going to achieve so much reach, but the greater wave is generated from the publicity or the controversy around the ad. So the publicity actually gives you more advertising potential than the direct advertising itself. You can write major blogs with news. So, for example, you could vandalize your own billboards and then write the news about that. And one example he says is, sometimes I just photoshopped ads onto screenshots of websites and got coverage for controversial ads that never actually ran. Now, I don't recommend that. I think that's dishonest, but this gives you a sense of how much manipulation and deception there really is in the media world where you're fighting for attention. Reality isn't really what matters. And I think a lot of people don't really get this. When they read the news, they think they're getting the truth. They're getting a distorted version of the truth, a version of the truth that is going to garner attention, even if it's not really representative of reality. So, for example, there was this fake company that was established essentially overnight called Ship Your Enemies Glitter. And this guy, he created a landing page, put the product up on producthunt.com, and because it was so crazy, it got picked up by the Washington Post and essentially went viral. And there was really no substance there. It was just a weird idea that turned into something substantial. Another example, there was a charity YouTube video that was put up on Kickstarter, and it didn't talk about the best or most important work that the charity was doing. Instead, what it did was exaggerate certain elements that would make the video spread. So exotic locations where the charity really didn't make much impact. And that video got embedded in a local blog in Brooklyn, and then it got picked up by the Huffington Post. And then it was emailed to a reporter at CBS and became a TV piece and a top trending item on Reddit, all because of a video that didn't really have any substance to it. It was just focusing on things that people tended to pay attention to. And that's the reality of how PR works. That's what happens. It's the salient things that get attention, not the things that have substance. And there are also ways to get fake inflation for your PR. So, for example, I got popular media folks to denounce the book, so the book that Ryan Holiday was promoting, and use their outrage to sell more copies. So the negative publicity is actually being used to your advantage here. I posted some comments under fake names to get people riled up. I know somebody that worked at a major advertising agency, and their job was essentially to inflate the social posts to help increase the reputation of the company or to save the reputation. So a lot of these comments, a lot of these likes are fake, or they're bots, or they're people that have been paid to comment. And that's the reality of public relations today. So we have these serious blogs like Business Insider, Gawker Media, Breitbart, Politico, Vox, BuzzFeed, Vice, Huffington Post, Medium, Drudge Report, etc. And one of the reasons that these are important is not necessarily because they're the most popular blogs out there, the most popular publications. It's because of who reads them. And who reads them? It's the media elite. The viral potential comes from the fact that if you are published in these blogs, you're going to be seen by TV producers and national newspaper writers. And that's really what you're doing. What you're really doing is kind of like an influencer campaign when you get published in these media. What is absurd and controversial can get publicity. So you want to look at the things in your business and your product that are absurd and controversial, even if they're anecdotal, even if they're rare. That's the stuff that's going to get you a story. Content creators or bloggers, they're busy writing several times a day. Here's a quote. I wrote an average of 5 posts a day. This is somebody at VentureBeat. Most bloggers are going to be using other blogs for research, and then the major newspapers, publications, etc. are also going to be referencing the blogs for their research. So they're trying to move quickly, and they're going to rely on other sources. So if you can get in the sources that they reference, then there's a much bigger potential for you to get published in major publications. Online publications don't have the same standards as print. So for example, you go to Forbes.com, Chicago Tribune, their online standards are just not going to be the same. So it's going to be much easier getting published there than in print. Here's a good example of another media manipulator, Milo, who stimulates a lot of controversy. So for example, when he goes to give a speech at a university, he wants the students protesting him because that is really how he gets attention. So if he gives a speech in front of 100 students, that's nice and all, but the real viral potential is the controversy around the speech. That's what's going to make him make major newspaper headlines. All it takes is one story to propel a blog from the dredges of the internet to mainstream notoriety. And often what the bloggers will do is manufacture or steal scoops and deceive readers. Social media influencers can also be really helpful with getting your PR. So you can simply pay them directly to post your messages or endorse your product. One approach I recommend is go to SparkToro, where you can identify the exact influencers for your target audience. One of the quickest ways to get coverage for a product online is to give it away for free to bloggers. And Ryan Holiday says that most are not going to give away their conflict of interest. So this is an approach I really do endorse, is identifying who the key influencers are. A lot of the times they're going to be bloggers or journalists, and focus your marketing on them instead of trying to hit everybody in the massive market that you're trying to appeal to. And one of the simplest ways to do it is to give them something for free. So I did this, for example, with podcasters. The major podcasters in the veterinarian industry, I sent free dictation microphones. I sent them free dictation software. And then when they're on the blog, they can talk about their experience using the product. They can have us come on as guests on their podcast. So giving stuff away for free is an excellent strategy. Frequent press releases are great because blogs like them. So you can have a press release for pretty much anything. A new store, a new product, even just a new color for a product that already exists. One easy way to distribute is through PR web. Or you could find a journalist, as I did, through a tool like Fiverr, Upwork, and they will distribute, even write the press release for you. Another thing to note is that bloggers prefer emails. So a lot of the time when you see interviews with people in the media, those weren't live interviews. Those weren't even phone call interviews. Those were just responses to email. So I'm filling this out all the time of journalists asking questions, and I just type it up in email. There's no true interactive interview happening. Another trick is to write reporters who covered topics you want to be quoted on. So you can compile a list or get an assistant to compile a list for you of who those journalists are. Study the top stories at Dig or MSN.com, and you'll notice a pattern. The top stories all polarize people. If you make it threaten people's 3 Bs, behavior, belief, or belongings, you get a huge virus-like dispersion. It's a quote from Tim Ferriss. If it doesn't spread, it's dead. Henry Jenkins. I think this is an element of marketing that a lot of mid-level or entry-level marketers don't understand. They think marketing is all about the direct effect. So how many people was I able to reach with that advertisement? But really, it's more about the reverberation that happens. That's where you really start to get economies of scale and economical marketing at play. It's the spreading, it's the word of mouth, it's the controversy, it's the discussion. So let's talk about what spreads. Depressing stuff doesn't spread. What spreads is often not really accurate or not the best version of the truth or the most accurate version of the truth. It's often an extreme version of reality. For example, move over Barbie, you're obsolete. Well, Barbie's not obsolete, but they're doing the extreme version of the point that they're making. One study suggests that the best predictor of virality is how much anger an article generates. People get viral content wrong. They imagine that the reason people share stuff is to have a laugh. But a huge part of sharing is being passionate about something, about shedding light on what really matters. That comes from the founder of Upworthy. So the kinds of emotions that cause people to spread things are anger, fear, excitement, laughter, and outrage, not emotions like hopelessness, despair, pity, or empathy. So it's not just about creating content that's emotional, it's the specific types of emotions that are going to encourage people to spread, to share, to talk about things. And there are other types of emotions, for example, like uncertainty, that are going to keep people engaged with the content, but that is not necessarily the thing that's going to encourage them to share it. Headlines. Get the whole story into the headline, but leave out just enough that people want to click. That comes from a former Gawker writer. Bloggers aren't interested in building up consistent, loyal readerships. They want stories that'll get hundreds of thousands or millions of views. So this is an interesting point, and there's a lot of misunderstanding in the marketing world that everything is about loyalty, that loyalty is the most important thing, but it's not necessarily. A lot of the times what really matters is just reaching a lot of people once. And we see here that that's what bloggers are trying to do. They're trying to get that story that really explodes. And it's not necessarily about getting the recurring business or the recurring readership. So you can play into that with the angle you put on your story. It's mostly the least important news that will find you. It's the extreme stuff that cuts through the noise. One key thing that gets PR is what we call pseudo events. And these events are basically just fabrications to get headlines. So for example, premieres for movies, the real purpose of those is for celebrities to get media coverage. It's not to watch the movie. And press conferences are really just about getting attention. Product launches are about media attention. Award ceremonies, grand openings, celebrity leaks are often just fabricated things that got leaked, and it's kind of a misnomer. Now, here's a quote from somebody that worked at a big marketing agency. If someone wrote about one of his clients, the agency would direct lots of traffic to that article until it was the most read piece of the day on the site and featured on the leaderboard. And once there, would get additional organic traffic. So there are ways of artificially inflating things. I think one of the easiest ways to do this would be with something like YouTube ads, where you could easily generate thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of views, even millions of views for a video if you wanted to. You could pay for tons of traffic campaigns that go to a blog article that you wrote on Huffington Post or TechCrunch or whatever, and make it look like this is a huge trending thing. And often when you run these traffic campaigns, these are just robots anyways that are generating the traffic, so it's cheap. All right, some article tips if you're the one writing these stories or blogs is short paragraphs, 1 to 2 sentences, have a boldface introduction or subheadline, and have bulleted lists, which are easier to scan, easier to skim, easier to read. Now, journalists, one of their biggest skills is finding the angle on any story, and that's typically writing a story with a sensational angle. Blogs will publish anything if you manufacture urgency around it. For example, a 20-minute head start over other media. There's this technique called concern trolling where You pretend you're upset and offended to exploit the ethics and empathy of your opponent. There's something to be very cautious of as people, former employees, competitors might just make up or inflate stories to get their own PR and pull you down in the process. You want to pre-fit your narrative to appeal to your blogger's biases. So, for example, if it's a conservative blog, you can twist your story in that direction. If it's a blog that likes to talk about quantitative research, you can pull up some quantitative research from your customers and put that spin on it. Everything you consume online has been optimized to make you depend on it. Content is engineered to be clicked, glanced at, or found, like a trap designed to bait, distract, and capture you. And you see cheating everywhere. YouTube thumbnails will have screenshots that never actually appear in the video. So that might be a famous person or an attractive person. And then you watch the entire video and you realize, hey, that never actually happens. I was anticipating, I was sticking around to see something that never occurred. Articles that are really just paid ads from Taboola or Outbrain. So, for example, my wife and I tried Blue Apron. Here's what happened. That looks like it's a legitimate article, but really it's just an ad, a native ad. And often what you also see is journalists that are presenting rumors as though they're substantiated, or just vague ideas or suggestions that are presented as though it's actual news that's unvalidated, unvetted. And to avoid accountability, what bloggers will often do is use certain vernacular, like sites are reporting, rather than outright saying this is the truth. They'll kind of use this vague, hey, we want to publish this thing that's unsubstantiated, but we don't want to be held accountable for it. And we as humans place an inordinate amount of trust in things that have been written down. And back in the day, writing things down was expensive. It was handwritten by educated people. It took a lot of time. But today, writing is cheap and it's digital. But still, we give it more credence than it deserves. Bloggers, they speculate, they rush, they exaggerate, they distort, and they mislead. A big part of their job is surprising people. Getting to a news story quickly is more important than getting it right. So, given how deceptive the media is, let's do some translations here. So, when you hear according to a tipster, this could be someone just tricking the blogger. We're hearing reports. This could be just some random mention on Twitter rather than a real report. Something got leaked. Basically, something got emailed to a blogger. Breaking means we want to publish something but not vet it or validate it whatsoever. We updated our article means we added a bunch of text to the very bottom and didn't actually adjust the story to tell the truth. Sources tell us. That means we have an unvetted source. Best-selling author means a self-published book on Amazon was #1 in a tiny category for a short time. Exclusive means there was a deal worked out where we're going to give favorable coverage to this particular person or company. We reached out for comment meant we sent an email 2 minutes before hitting the publish button. Quotes. When there's a quote, you might think that the journalist or blogger interviewed somebody, but often what they're doing is they're just taking quotes from another media source. And my last comment here is that sites like blogs only sell a fraction of their available ads every month. So they're doing a lot of things to try to get more advertising revenue. And often that means misleading stories, sensational stories, stories that are actually paid for. And increasingly what we're seeing is a lot of click fraud, a lot of manipulation on site design to try to make it seem as though there are more impressions and clicks than there really are.